Greetings, this is Tony L, and I'm going to bring a thought to you. This is Black History Month. The man who started all this was Dr. Carter Woodson, and I thought it's more than appropriate to shine some light on him. And one of my favorite quotes from him, and I think it's most pertinent during this month. And when you talk about the status of the Black community during Black History Month. Because when you control a man's thinking, you do not have to worry about his actions. He will find his proper place and he will stay in it. You do not need to send him to the back door. He will go without being told. In fact, if there is no back door, he will protest until one is made for his use. His education demands it. If y'all have not read his most famous book, The Miseducation of the Negro, I would highly recommend you checking it out. Because when you look at the sad status of the and condition of the Black American today, and you compare that with pictures, depictions of the Black American in the late 1800s, early 1900s, 1930s, 1940s, 1950s, 1960s, early part of 1960s in particular, and you set that aside, a depiction or a picture of the Black community, the Black man, the Black female, the Black family today, the most passive observer has to ask the question, what the fuck happened? Because the comparison of those two cultures, totally different cultures of the same people during different times, one would argue we will be more prosperous today than we were back then. The picture would not tell that story. That picture would show a culture today that is in the quick descension, not ascension. But what do you think is going to be the product when you tell people that they are a product of slaves, that they only came to this continent, to this country, bound by chains, brought to by a Caucasian ethnic group? What do you think is going to be the product of a people who is told time and time that they do not have to be responsible for their actions based on what supposedly happened to some other people, some other period of time during a period that has been called slavery, the slave trade, slave period? What do you think will be the product of a family and community where the man is removed from the home by government? Not directly, but when LBJ changed the Social Security entitlement qualification, saying that the female cannot have a male in the home if she receives government financial government assistance. So you leave the home unprotected without a man for the woman or the man father for the child. What do you think is going to be the product of that? And when you're constantly showing the depictions of the youngest mind up, that the primary financial avenue is that of sports, singing, or entertainment. What do you think the product of that is going to be? But when you do more educated digging, you realize that the term African American is only been a cultural phenomenon since the 1980s. Since the 1980s. And that was famously coined by Jesse Jackson. And when you try to go into the government and just figure out how do they classify African and American, because you think about it intellectually, it's nonsensical. How can people be from two continents? Africa and America. How does that work? How does that work? How is that not logically repugnant to anyone? But when you go to the government and say, how do you classify, and is this a natural origin? So when I go to the Office of Personal Management and I look at origins, you don't see African American. You see black. What did they say about blacks? Black, not of Hispanic origin. A person having origins in any other of the black racial groups of Africa does not include people of Mexico, Cuba, Central America, South America, or other Spanish cultures or origins, which I find interesting, because there are a lot of blacks come from South America, but that's a discussion for another day. So if what we think who and what we are, it's not even official governmental classification. What does that mean? If I can go, and it's interesting, you hear all of these, like, you gonna find your heritage. And somehow most blacks end up in Africa. But when you look at census reports from way back 1700s, 1800s, they don't have African American on it when it's referring to black people. So when did I become African American? And am I African American? We need to ask serious questions as a community, as a country, as a people, to find out what is our history. Because again, our education is telling us something that we are not. What they're presenting to us as our history is his history. But if you tell me constantly, repeatedly, and I'm being raised in this image of a buffoon, of a pauper, of someone who's always looking for a handout, rather than a hand up, and I hate education. I'm averse to education and knowledge. To be any other is to be white. That's the most ridiculous thing. But who did the whites learn it from? Is that not even a question need to be asked during this period of Black History Month?